coming up with their own solutions and lobbying, and it's pretty breathtaking. And you know, I mean, there's things going on there of not only are they sort of doing the proactive stuff, but you know, going out using the barbers, just like the blood pressure stuff, but doing, say, assessments of, do you know your cardiovascular risk score, you know, ASCVD calculators and so forth. Within the data group and stuff, we've branched out, and you know, it's still kind of baby steps, but even baby steps are allowing us to do things that are pretty much unprecedented, to my knowledge, in terms of some of the regional quality collaboratives. Let me just go ahead for a second. Okay, so you know, instead of just collecting the measures for the whole county, now we're you know, we're asking the groups to also report aggregated stratified by age and sex for some measures, by zip code for some measures, as well, and insurance type. Those little additions are allowing us to do some really, really cool things. And one of the cool things is you can not only start to look at population, you know, performance at a population level, but you can start to look at the combined performance or rates for different communities based on real intermediate outcome data rather than just sort of health survey data. The participating groups are starting to have really meaningful benchmarking data. We're starting to find some areas where there may be shared opportunities for you know, collective action, where all the different participating groups have a stake here. They've got patients here. These are hard to treat patients, and it's not going to be solved. You are now working in a value-based world, and you're not going to be able to address it just in your 20-minute visits or anything else. Maybe you can work together collectively, not only as provider systems, but work with some of the community advocates, some of the community services, public health agencies. And so, you know, and we're employing some, happily there are some fairly, you know, inexpensive ways to do very fancy data visualization.
Alan, before you leave that impressive slide,
Yeah.
don't assume that everybody in the room understands what they're looking at there. Can you point on the slide and describe a little bit more? Because this is your genius. This is your unique.
Yeah, some of it is, you know, this isn't actually unique to me. These are basic kinds of techniques. There are different ways we're finding some kinds of data visualizations are more helpful and instructive than others. But what you're looking at there, that figure, that was actually this is just the IHA zip code quality map. You know, that's finally some of the plans are reporting it. And what you're seeing, I think this is called a chloropleth map. Just the different colors are a way to visually represent whether there are higher or lower performance rates there. Usually, you know, you'll see some red where the performance is worse and some other color where it's better. These are bubble charts. I think I'll show you another one in a second. And then this is just actually this was an example before we started to do the data analysis. This is from AMJA and their the Measure Up Pressure Down campaign. And this is just Tableau software. Now we're starting to do it regularly, but it's sort of showing the percentage who are in control, not in control, and I think the ones who are documented and so forth. But let me. There's some others. So let's. We're gonna skip that. This is not high-end GIS stuff, but the way we had been doing our meetings had been, you know, the systems provide us with these flat files, denominators, numerators, and someone initially like me, and now we've got someone at RA to help, would sort of compile them and make some figures and so forth. And now we're getting zip code data. With Tableau, it's one of these new, it's kind of like the new Excel for those of you who haven't used it, but it allows you to do a lot of different kinds of data visualizations. You can do graphs. You can also do some mapping, which is kind of cool. So these are Tableau maps. For the really good hotspot stuff, you wouldn't do this. But what's cool about it is, you know, it's zip code level stuff. So we can finally look in these different areas. This is a more traditional. This map is just kind of showing. This is actually based on data. I don't think this was a complete data set, but you know that we're getting the 2015 data. We got it earlier this year, and so this is just showing in different areas. This is the numbers or areas where you have a larger number of hypertensive patients across the different groups. And then this is showing areas where you have adequately controlled hypertension. We are literally just starting, and back at the ranch there, you know, we're actually starting to analyze and look for areas, you know, use different thresholds for what constitutes enough patients and looking at certain different quality thresholds. But we're going to find some areas where there's some interesting things going on there. And so here's diabetes by zip code. And this is just, we're also, you know, it's a quality collaborative. We're now starting to give the groups, instead of doing the slides, we just basically prepare Tableau files for them that are, you can't really see it here, but essentially they're now these interactive dashboards that they can look at how they're doing, they can look at how their others are doing, and then they can look at it at a you know, group level, population level, cross measures, and so forth. This just for, so has people in the data group have seen this stuff? Has anyone else seen this?
Some of the people who would have come to the summit would have seen it, but there are a lot of new faces here, so if you would just do the
Sure.
top one.
So this is some work out of from our colleagues in Berkeley, and this is Brent Fulton led this effort. He's an economist, happened to be trained at Rand. I remember when he was approaching me. This was when I was in the height of, you know, the bandwidth was way down, and he was like, "So, Hattie and Steve Schwartell want me to look at, see if there was an impact at the population level in San Diego." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're just getting started, and yeah, there's been some stuff rolled out, but I don't know. You know, the odds you're going to see something at a population level that quickly seem dubious." Anyway, so he and his team did actually go through and do a very, you know, good analysis, and they looked at AMI hospitalization rates, they looked at stroke rates. But what this is showing is AMI, or showing both. The red is strokes, the blue is AMI hospitalizations. And basically the strokes, you know, was on a slow, steady trend. California is the dotted line, San Diego's the blue. But on AMI hospitalizations around 2010, when some of the stuff started to happen on rolling out the bundled therapy, on some of the meetings with the groups and so forth, by 2011 there starts to be this big drop off and it stayed down. That, let's see, someone's got it. Okay, so 11% difference, drop off, I guess, from 2010, and then by 2014 it's a 17% difference compared to 3.4% for the rest of California. And when you actually do the economic stuff and sort of say AMI hospitalizations are going to cost this much short term and over whatever period of time, and you do the cost for California, oops, sorry. So it's basically like $41 million in savings. So
just for the San Diego area?
yeah. And then, or I think it's, let's see, wait, hospitalization from equivalence to 13.5 reduction. Yeah, and then there's another calculation if all throughout California you were getting the same rates, and it's really mind blowing. Anyways, this
About
is
$500 million
Yeah.
over that period.
but so this is you know, now we have a little bit of a funding. There's a CDC grant that's funding some of the data for quality work, data group work, and now we call ourselves Data for Quality Project, because one of the things that's happened is we can't just work with the data, I mean with the medical directors on this stuff. We have to not only look at that, but we're starting to look at community factors and other stuff. And so, you know, we had this, our next report is going to be on, is it possible for, you know, provider groups and county public agencies and many others to share quality data, performance data, and actually do something. We will see. But, you know, so San Diego County, the Health and Human Services, has different health areas. So they've got some health stats, and we're going to be looking at sort of the regions overall and some of their sub areas and see how some of our performance data goes there. One of the things we're really, it will be proof of the pudding, is where we start to be able to look at where there are known community interventions, or there have been community interventions, and we look at where the medical systems, you know, performance is good or bad, or what happens if you do an intervention at the provider level, you know, what accounts for it. But here was the thing. This particular one was from a few years ago, but it was the blue area was a community intervention that was completely planned out separately from the healthcare systems. This is the areas of poor quality for the healthcare system data we were looking at. The healthcare providers, the healthcare systems had no real idea, or there was no coordination or sense of tracking the data as to if there were any synergies, if there was ways to sort of reinforce what was going on in one or the other. So we want to be able to do that routinely. So this is just, we're starting to dabble and really drill down a little bit, but just, you know, for the sake of this meeting, this is supposed to be one of those multi-level slides, but so imagine those lines up there aren't there, and look just at the red bars. And those are the San Diego County AMI hospitalization rates, and you know, they're steadily coming down. And so, not that from a statistical research thing it makes sense to do it, but we just wanted to see how, you know, what you're seeing is, you know, what's the plot of our hypertension control rates. And remember, this is in a population of 200,000. And, you know, our population is, it's steadily increasing, and the purple line is our blood pressure control among diabetics. So the next time I or someone else from San Diego talks to you, we hope to be able to, you know, not only show something like this, but show you the different areas and the subgroups, and you know how it was explained. This is just to give you some sense of some of the other studies. This is a fairly large cohort study where we are. It's a CMMI study, and we're enrolling at-risk cardiac patients with CVD risk and trying to do bundled therapy and coaching. It is providers all across the area. I have to say, as impressive as like the data group has been, you know, once we started to get some funding and we were able to hire additional staff and so forth, it's gradually grown to support these kinds of efforts. And you know, we've got a lot of added groups that weren't originally part of the data group but are now parts of the study, and it's going to inform what we're learning there on what happens to these patients with cardiovascular risk of different types on different meds. We'll be able to, apply to some other parts of the population. Here's some reports. Along the way, there's been agreements on some guidelines for hypertension treatment and some other things. There is a new campaign about being a heart care champion. Some of that, I think, came out of San Diego. We are looking, in addition to the basic stuff of supporting the analytics of the data group, we're also trying to look at how, if we could start to model some of the expected, effects of some of the things we're doing and find, where's the best value. Okay, there's that. There's a wireless blood pressure thing. I would just want to wrap up with a few things of sort of some directions I think things are going, which you guys might consider. When I managed to leave out, I probably packed away with my kids' college stuff, is some really wonderful slides on one on gender gaps in some kinds of measures. We see, typically women do better on most quality measures. They do better on, they do as well or better on, things like blood pressure control. But on lipid control and statins and stuff, there's been this persistent finding across, health plans across, we've looked at the California level, we looked at nationally, and then, we use the data group to say, hey, can you just go and stratify your data internally, don't give us the files. And sure enough, among these really top performing groups, there were 8 to 15 percentage point, absolute percentage point differences in some of the LDL control rates. And that's kind of consistent with what we've seen. If you take into account, are they on a moderate dose statin, it comes down some, but it's still there, and it tends to vary even in sub areas of San Diego, LA, we've looked at Sacramento. Anyway, so that's going to be one of the things we're looking at, but that's low-hanging fruit. And then there is routine assessments of racial ethnic disparities. It's coming. Some of you who are in the plans may already kind of have a sense from the Covered California and the requirements for by 2017 that you have race ethnicity data and you are doing something meaningful with it. The class standards are, I'm working on a national class standards committee, whatever, and it's going to become routine at a organizational. Here is just, and so, Kaiser got started on this a long time ago. If you don't have enough self-reported race ethnicity data, there are now very well validated ways to, while you're getting the self-reported stuff, to add it in. This is, I coincidentally am an expert in that and kind of developed it, but Covered California is going to use it. Kaiser did, but don't wait. And then once you have that, you can do all kinds of stuff. This is just some work we were doing in New York. I'm gonna call it.
This is great, Alan. Thank you very much. I know we have very little time. We only have a few minutes, maybe 2 minutes. And if we could get maybe 1 or 2 questions, and could you stick around a little bit just in case? Because this is great. And as everybody knows, we do have a data group that's been meeting earlier. We've been meeting for several months now, trying to replicate what's happening in San Diego. But we're going to open it up for at least 1, hopefully 2 questions if we can. Anybody has a question? I thought you answered it all.
Where are you now?
Dr. Apgar.
With the groups that gave you the data, the medical groups and IPAs, you mentioned they got their results. Were they able to see the other groups' results, or was that all blind?
It's blinded, you know, they know who, so, you know, we send this stuff out and then we send another email saying their secret identity this month, but it's, you know, A or B. But, you know, they can figure it out too, phone users know that, it's just they mainly don't want it to be, kind of public knowledge, but they're grown very comfortable with it.
Definitely, you can run with it as well as, yeah, it's very natural. And was RAND, was that the repository that people are going to see all the data?
Yeah, and we're now, I mean, we were the informal repository before in terms of just on my weekends, but it was at RAND, and now we actually have funding and we are formally, we tightly manage it, we have secure sites, and again, we're starting to make, you know, websites or files they can kind of look at interactively, so.
And different area, what role do you think community interventions, behavior modification at the patient level and the member, individual level, played a role in getting blood pressure and lipid under control compared to traditional doctor-patient visits?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that one of the other parallel initiatives going on besides either San Diego was the Health and Human Service Agency there, which is a big behemoth of a thing. They were doing a, you know, Be Well San Diego 10-year initiative, and they have some of these sort of targeted outreach, get communities active and so forth. But, you know, the challenge has been, and we've had discussions with them, I think they're kind of looking forward to starting to look at it more systematically, but they don't know. They don't really know where they've really had fidelity to the implementation. If each table here is a different community, there's no basic data on, okay, so you did this rollout of something or intervention. Do you know whether anybody actually did anything or to what level? And so we're trying to just gradually build that up. What I can, the other thing I really just need to get across, guys, is, again, we're starting with some really basic stuff, but the chicken soup for the soul stuff is part of it, but it's the sanity stuff. There are adult conversations with different people that are leaders of this community, and sometimes you're working and listening with people you don't necessarily get to talk to. But sometimes you can come up with really creative solutions, and it's, I mean, part of it, I've been sort of put as, you know, sort of an expert in the middle and driving it. You gotta be clear, the way I've run it and others involved is it has, and very shortly after the RCI kind of kicked this off, and Liz kicked it off, is it became a locally driven entity. And so much of what I do, and now our team, and you know, these data groups, everything else, is it is an ongoing iterative back and forth discussion of, all right, here's this, what kinds of questions do you have? Have you thought of this? And you know, and we're starting to show them that stuff. Sometimes stuff they never see or they don't get to hear because they're too busy to hear about, you know, the latest study. But you've got a room full of highly educated, brilliant people who are some of the best in the game, who are creatively working together. And so, you know, that's what I'm inviting and encouraging you guys to do. I can see you're, you know, it's late in the afternoon, you're tired and so forth. It's just, you know, part of it is, and getting back to one of the initial things, life is short. You don't know what's going to happen. Do stuff you love, and don't be afraid to like take on something that's, you know, I just encourage you to do it, because your system, you will be amazed by how many people within your system at different levels can get inspired. And what comes out of it, the other thing for those of you who are clinicians, I like to think of this as a congestive heart failure model. I can explain it to you. But basically your heart is pumping against stuff, and it's like if you got high blood pressure, it has to work harder to pump the blood, right? And there's filling too, but And in a sense, if you're like actually working on the community stuff, if you're trying to instigate or work on stuff systematically, whether it's to change policy or roll things out, it lowers how much work you have to do to get your performance goals up. I mean, it's that simple, and it builds on itself, because there's, as smart as you all are, there's all kinds of things you can't even begin to see or imagine sitting here of what will become possible. You can do the thing which is good, which is, you know, stand 5 years in the future or whatever and say, all right, I'm dropping all the cynicism, just whatever. And if we could really work together and do something amazing, what would we take on? What would it be? What are our unique skills here? What's possible here? And you guys are a smaller community, which gives you more nimbleness and advantages, and you're in the heart of Sacramento. I mean, you guys could have a lot of fun, but you could change policies. Anyways, good luck.
Thank you. So, if anyone has any questions, thank you for sticking around. We'll see you next month.